Kmart has fallen victim to 2 major security breaches in less than a 3-year time frame. Both attacks involved having credit and debit card information stolen by malware that hacked into point-of-sale devices. Credit unions and banks even suspected that after the first breach, Kmart would be vulnerable towards another breach in the future. They received warning that credit card information had been stolen from cards that all seemed to be used at Kmart locations. This is what led them to that suspicion. Cybersecurity breaches such as this one involve the use of varying technological factors, particularly programming, databases, hardware and software, and networking have a major influence on the way security breaches are induced and approached. After Sears Holdings, Kmart's parent company, became aware that there was suspicious, unauthorized activity on their customers' credit cards, they launched an investigation with forensic experts. Inevitably, they found that their payment systems had been infected with what seemed to be malicious software. Programming was used within the code that bypassed the antivirus systems. Malicious coding was used by the hackers, which went undetected by Kmart's antivirus software and application controls. Kmart obviously took it upon themselves to remove the code and undo the vulnerability that lied within the system. The best way for Kmart to use programming to prevent such attacks in the future is to use encryption or tokenization. Malicious code becomes invaluable if all it's used for is gaining access to data that can't be understood. End-to-end encryption would be useful because it requires a key or a code that constantly changes to keep private information safe. Data and processing locations become scrambled whilst in transit, making it unable to be read. In addition, tokenization would prove to be useful since it sends data from one point to another without the information being identified. If hackers did end up getting access to this data, there's no way they could see any personal information like credit card numbers. They would just see fake data, while the real data is kept by a third-party service. In Kmart's case, no personal information was leaked. All names, emails, birthdays, social security numbers, etc. were kept safe from the hackers. Credit card numbers, of course, were compromised since the information that was stolen was enough to clone a credit card. A common technique in stealing this kind of credit card information is through SQL injection. They're one of the biggest threats to databases, and databases are essential in holding a company's transactions, financial data, and customer or employee information. An SQL injection occurs when an attacker uses malicious SQL statements to control a database server. This allows the attacker to access personal information in the operating system of the database. Kmart defended themselves by taking the initiative to enhance its cybersecurity software. Since malicious software and malware had previously infected their stored payment data systems, this seems like the most logical solution. The malware used was specifically designed to copy and steal information from the point-of-sale devices. It copied the account data that was stored within the magnetic strip of the card. This is the information that allowed the hackers to clone credit cards and have unauthorized access to customers' credit cards. In Kmart's defense, they did end up installing secure hardware into their point-of-sale systems to ensure credit card safety. Their systems have EMV chip and PIN technology, which decreases the chance of fraud or theft of their customers' credit card information. It's less likely for an individual who uses the chip to have their card cloned than it is for an individual who just swipes their card, since the magnetic strips have a vulnerable quality to them. Cards with chips are harder to counterfeit and are also more expensive to counterfeit. Unfortunately, not all banks have issued their customers with chip-enabled cards, which means these Kmart customers are more vulnerable to the attack. To breach into a company's data has become as simple as just getting access to their restricted network. Since part of Kmart's network was compromised, it would have been useful to have more network security. Ways in which to provide this would be to apply access control lists on the router, or to create strict access control lists. Applying access control lists is beneficial because it limits unauthorized traffic to payment processing networks. Attackers wouldn't be authorized to access the network that controls payment processing. Having these access control lists allows the segmenting of public systems and database systems which stores payment card data. That would make it harder for an attacker to gain access to the network, therefore making it harder to gain private information that compromises credit card information. Chris Brathwaite, the spokesperson for Sears, wouldn't comment on how many locations were actually impacted by this breach. Sources do suggest that it didn't affect Kmart stores nationwide. If it did, there would be a larger amount of alerts of unauthorized credit card activity than there happened to be. They continue to work with law enforcement to ensure their liability to their customers. They enhance their security and defenses in response to the attack, and they claim that their company places a significant importance around data security. They acknowledge that they have to respond to the changes in technology and threats continuously. Overall, Kmart's data breach contained varying technological factors that contributed to the accessibility of the attack.